I'm Kenneth Temple, and welcome to our Cajun Creole class today. We will be preparing Cajun Jambalaya, Louisiana's famous one-pot dish with Creole seasoning, smoked sausage, chicken, and one big old pot of love. Let's get into the kitchen and start cooking. Before we get started, we need to make our Creole spices. Let's make it from scratch. First, we need 3 tablespoons of kosher salt, 'Alright. We also need 2 tablespoons of black pepper, 1 tablespoon of garlic powder, 1 tablespoon of onion powder, 1 tablespoon of white pepper, 1 tablespoon of cayenne, 1 tablespoon of paprika, and 1½ teaspoons of cumin. Okay. Now we'll combine that with a fork. You can use a whisk. You can stick this in a food processor and blitz it together and make it all nice and fine. Whatever you want, but just get this nice and mixed. And in Creole Cajun cuisine, we love to have a well balance of white pepper, black pepper, and cayenne pepper, so it sings a harmonious note on your palate. The white pepper is nice and mild. The black pepper has a mild spice, and the cayenne, well, that's self-explanatory. Now that our Creole spices is all mixed up, let's clear this out so we can begin to chop down our smoked sausage and our chicken. Since we're about to begin cutting our proteins, it's very important that you don't cross-contaminate. I'm going to take some wet paper towels to make sure that my second board does not slip. Now, if you don't have the luxury of having 2 cutting boards, cut your smoked sausage first and then your raw chicken second, then hot soapy water, wash off your cutting board, your knives, and then get back to the kitchen. First thing we're going to do is we're going to cut 24 ounces of beef smoked sausage. You can use turkey sausage, you can use a vegan sausage, you can use andouille if you can get your hands on it. But don't feel any pressure to have to use any andouille sausage when it comes to Cajun Creole cuisine. You always want to just use what's fresh and available near you. But if you get your hands on some andouille sausage, by all means, use it. So we're just going to slice these down to about a 1/4 inch slice. Don't worry if it's not perfect. Everybody's still going to eat it. Now, I remember growing up when we had the stretcher meal, my mama would go ahead and take these and half them into what I call half moons. Now everybody's for sure going to get some smoked sausage in their jambalaya. Because look, you don't always have the luxury of having every single thing you need. So sometimes you have to make a meal stretch. And that's just one way that you can stretch the meal. And by halving the sausage, it's a great way to feed a crowd. And even without halving, this is one of those one-pot dishes that can feed the cookout, the catering event, the game day party. Anything you need for a quick one-pot dish, jambalaya is your go-to. Now let's break down our boneless chicken thighs. You can use breast if you love. I like boneless chicken thighs cut into 1-inch pieces because chicken thighs have more flavor. You can use chicken tenders, but boneless chicken thighs saves you some time. Now, if you really want to save a little bit of money, all you have to do is do a little butchering. You can get the chicken thighs with the skin on, bone in, rip off the skin, and just take that bone off, and you'll save yourself a few dollars. Other than that, pay somebody to cut everything for you. Now, one smoked meat that's not too popular outside of Louisiana that we love is tasso. And tasso is traditionally a smoked pork that's well seasoned and smoked the same way you would do smoked sausage. It also comes in turkey now if you're trying to go a little bit healthier. But that will be another great meat to add into your jambalaya to add another layer of flavor. Now, if you want to add some shrimp, you want to add some crawfish, if you want to be fancy and add some lobster, you know. You will always add those at the very last second. Once we get to the point at the end of the jambalaya where we're going to fluff in our green onions, that's when you'll add those shellfish items, simply because they only take a few minutes to cook, and the residual heat from the rice will cook those to perfection. Any sooner, you'll end up with rubbery seafood and people will talk bad about you. And since you're taking this class with me on the Food Network Kitchen, we don't have people talk about us in a bad way. Now that our chicken is nice and diced, what we're gonna do is we're gonna transfer it to a bowl. Let's get rid of this first. We're gonna transfer our chicken to a bowl. And then we're gonna go wash our hands, and we're gonna come right back and season this chicken up. Now we're gonna take 2 tablespoons of canola oil. And I like to always add my oil around the rim of the bowl, so as I'm tossing, each little piece of chicken gets a little bit of love in it. We're gonna also add 2 tablespoons of our Creole seasoning. Make sure you evenly sprinkle it over. You don't want any batches of chicken. You want every piece of chicken to know that it's loved. Now I'm gonna toss this with a spoon. For some reason, every time I mix something, I stir the bowl. It's probably from my childhood watching my dad mix cakes, and every time he would beat something, he would turn the bowl to help the bowl and him. I don't know, it's like this little dance, you know, you just dance and stir, I don't know. But you can see how beautifully coated each piece of chicken is. This chicken knows that it's loved, and it's on its way into our bellies. We're gonna go ahead on and preheat our pot over a medium-high heat. We wanna make sure that this is preheated, so once we add this chicken, it begins to almost fry it, so we can get this beautiful fond on the bottom of our pot. Now, fond might not be a word that you're familiar with, but it's all those little brown bits that most amateur cooks wash away when they're cooking, which is nothing but full flavor of love. And that's what we're gonna use to build this Cajun jambalaya, base by base, layer by layer, deliciousness by deliciousness. Now that our pot is nice and hot, we're gonna add 2 tablespoons of oil. Now let's add our chicken. That's what you want to hear. If you don't hear that sizzle, take it out and let your oil get hot just a few seconds longer. Now stir your chicken to make sure that all of the chicken is covered with the oil. And this is just going to ensure that each piece of chicken begins to fry exactly how we want to. Now, if you notice that your chicken is starting to cook too fast, just reduce your heat just a little bit, but we still want some good high heat so this chicken can essentially fry. Oh, yeah. Ah. You can smell instantly, soon as the chicken begins to cook, that beautiful aroma just starts to dance all on your palate. You can taste it in the back of your mouth. But always just make sure you stir the chicken every now and then, just to make sure that it's not sticking or burning. This smells amazing. Now, growing up, jambalaya was served the Creole style, which is similar to the African jollof rice. I really never liked the red rice. It always reminded me of ketchup rice. It wasn't until I got in culinary school that I learned about this Cajun jambalaya. It's rich, deep, meaty flavor that was just so amazing. I had to get my hand on it, perfecting this recipe. It took 7 years, and we'll get into what my first jambalaya looked like year 1. So as you begin to stir your pot, you'll notice these little brown bits on the bottom of your pot. This is the fond. This is the flavor that we're looking for. Fond flavor. Flavor fond. That's what we're looking for. Smelling good, smelling delicious. Now I got a bigger spoon. Let's take our chicken out. This chicken is smelling very delicious, but do not be tempted to eat it. It is only cooked halfway through. And the reason why we're only cooking it halfway through is because it has to cook for another 30 minutes in the jambalaya, and it's gonna do all the extra work for us. Now, let's add our sausage, and we're gonna cook this for about another 5 minutes until it's nice and brown. Give it a stir to make sure it's coated with the fat. Good cooking right here. Now, what we have here is we have Creole seasoning, chicken flavor, and fat. All of that flavor is now being infused into our smoked sausage. This is how you layer your flavors, okay? Now, the very first time I made this jambalaya, I did not have any of these techniques. My jambalaya really looked like a rice pilaf with specks of orange pepper and sausage in it. It tasted good, but it wasn't jambalaya. So I had to go into a deep search and ask my teachers, who was Cajuns, how did they really develop this flavor? And this is the technique that I was taught to get the flavor profile. It's all in the fond. And a little tomato paste too, which we'll add later. Beautiful, looking good. A few more minutes. I'm gonna stop touching it so it can actually begin to fry up and get nice and brown. So Cajun Creole cuisine, you'll find the holy trinity, well-seasoned food, and love in it. But just know that the Creoles are a little bit more refined than the Cajun. City folks and country folks still love good cooking. And now you begin to see some browning on our sausage. This is exactly what we're looking for. And look at the bottom of that pot. You may think that that's burnt. I know that's flavor waiting to go into our jambalaya. Oh, right there, right there. Oh, let me show you. Can you see that one? You see that one? That's blackened smoked sausage. Oh yeah, that's good. Look at how beautiful this looks. Now, one thing to keep in mind, you don't want to over fry your sausage. The big thing that we're going after is this fond on the bottom of the pot. We're adding this to our chicken bowl because all of this is going right back into the pot and finished cooking later. See all this here? Took me 7 years to figure that out. You do it once, sure, you can cook. You do it over and over and over, now you have perfected the dish. And this is what it took 7 years for me to finally understand how to get that nice fond on the bottom of my pot. Now, you may be a little nervous, but once we add our onion, celery, and bell pepper, it's just gonna suck all that up and infuse with flavor. And then this jambalaya is on its way to your belly. Slide this out and let's get ready to start chopping our onions, celery, and bell pepper. Now, there's several ways you can chop a bell pepper, but I want to show y'all the fancy chef way when you're trying to impress your friends. What you want to do is you want to just cut off the top, cut off the bottom, and then you want to make a nice little incision on the bell pepper. Then what you're going to do is press down on the bell pepper and just slowly roll the bell pepper out, okay? And then you get rid of the pith, you get rid of the stem, and you're good to go. Fancy, right? Yeah, fancy. And then from here, what I like about this style is from here we just have our bell peppers in one spot that we can chop it down. Now you can use an orange, you can use a yellow, or you can use a green bell pepper. I like to use a red bell pepper because it gives some color. It gives some flavor, some flair to our final dish. And so we're just gonna keep on chopping. But don't think we're just throwing these guys away. We're gonna break these guys down too. So I like to just stack them all up in one bunch. If you're not comfortable with cooking, do this in portions. My stomach is having a conversation with my palate because I can just smell the fond in the pot and I know it's about to happen because I've made this dish so many times. It's about to be a party, y'all. It's about to be a party. Look at how beautiful that is. My culinary instructors be happy I got my knife skills on point. And now we're gonna do the same thing with our edges. You don't want to throw this away. But if you don't feel like chopping this part up, this would be something great to add to some stock somewhere down the line. Scraps of vegetables are a great thing to use in homemade stocks. Oh yeah. Now, jambalaya is amazing because you can feed a whole entire village with it, but it's also amazing because it feeds everybody. No matter if you're vegan, pescatarian, a meat eater, you can always make it to anybody's preference that loves to eat good old food. It also stores well and freezes very well too. But in my house, it never really lasts that long to make it to either spot. Chopping down the celery. So the Holy Trinity is Louisiana cooking. Onion, celery, and bell pepper. If you do anything else, if you throw a turnip in here, if you throw a carrot up in here, I don't even know why you would throw a turnip in here, but if you do anything outside of these right here, you are not truly making Cajun Creole cuisine. This is the base. This is the mother of all things Cajun Creole. And don't forget about the love, okay? Now, a Spanish onion is preferred because it has a mild sweet flavor, not as sweet as a Vidalia onion and not as strong as a white onion. But if you can only get your hands on a white onion, use that, but never use a Vidalia onion, because then you're going to end up making dessert. You're going to have a jambalaya dessert because of the sweetness of the Vidalias, okay? Now, it's very important when you're breaking down the onion, chopping means breaking down, that you leave the root intact. The root keeps the onion from falling apart as you chop it, okay? That's very important. I cannot tell you how many novice cooks I see cut off the top and the bottom, then wondering why they almost lost a finger. Well, that's because the very thing that was holding it together, you took it off. So always keep the root on, okay? Yes, I said root. And if you're new to cooking, new to chopping, just follow the little lines in the onions, and that'll help you just get a nice even dice. Oh yeah, look at all of that. Look at all of that. Good flavor, fresh ingredients, locally sourced. About to go into this pot of love into our belly. Okay, now let's cut on our fire again, because we cut it off while we did our chopping. Cut this back up to a medium heat. In a matter of seconds, as we add the onion, celery, and bell pepper, as they begin to release their moisture, it's going to begin to pick up all of this beautiful fine and begin to incorporate itself as one family. Full of flavor, full of love. Oh yes, Cajun Jambalaya. Delicious. Now, we still have all of this good extra oil left into our pot, so we don't need to add any more oil. All the oil that we need in this recipe is already in our pot and floating around in our chicken and sausage too. Now that our pot is nice and hot, let's add our vegetables. Get on in there. I always like to add just a little pinch of salt just to help the vegetables sweat faster. So just stir this, give it a little second, and we'll begin to pick up all those flavors. Now, as the vegetables release their moisture, we're going to take our spoon and begin to scrape the bottom of the pot to help pick up all of that fine, to help incorporate it with our vegetables. See how it picks up nice and easy? The vegetables are doing all of the heavy lifting. Now, while that's cooking, let's break down our garlic. So, garlic comes in a variety of sizes. No garlic is made the same. Add as much as you like, as little as you love. I requested 6 garlic cloves in here, but you see this jumbo one right here? This is at least 2.5 garlics by itself. So this is perfect for me. So I'm just gonna take my garlic and smash it. Smash it. Then we're gonna go ahead and start chopping it down. So as you're working your garlic into its nice chopped mince, just keep an eye on your vegetables in the pot to make sure that they are not sticking. But you will notice that by the steam that's being released in the pot at the same time. There we go. And it's very important to scrape. Scrape the bottom of that pot. A wooden spoon works best so you can get all of those brown bits. And as you can see, just look at it. coating our vegetables seasoned with love. Smells like a party in here. So while the vegetables are steaming, the steam is a good visual cue for you to know that your vegetables are beginning to get nice and translucent. Once they stop, your vegetables are starting to burn. We don't want our vegetables to burn. We want them to get nice and translucent. It's looking good, so what I'm going to do now is add 2 teaspoons of Creole seasoning to this. And this is one of the biggest secrets to Cajun Creole cuisine, layering your flavors. This allows you to take a bite out of something and realize how amazing it is, then take a second bite out of it and realize you wasn't lying to yourself. Layer those flavors. Allow the herbs and spices to begin to wake up as it hits the oils. This is the key to Cajun Creole cuisine, layering your flavors. Because if you just dump it in there once, it'll taste good, but adding it a little bit at a time just builds depth upon depth upon depth of deliciousness. You hear that? That's the sound of the vegetables cooking down. That's perfect. That's right where we want it to be. So now we're going to add our garlic. One bay leaf. 1 teaspoon of dried thyme. And 1 teaspoon of cayenne. Now, if you're on the edge on if it's too spicy, you can omit this step, or you can add a 1/2 teaspoon or a 1/4 teaspoon. But one important thing to remember is rice is going to absorb all of this flavor, and you always want to over-season your rice dishes because the rice is just going to absorb everything you put in it. This is another thing I learned in the 7 years of developing this recipe. What I thought was enough really wasn't, because the rice absorbed all of that flavor and I was lacking flavor. It tasted good, but it wasn't what I wanted. By doing these steps here, we're building that flavor into it and ensuring that we have a delicious pot of jambalaya. Now we're going to add 2 cups of parboiled rice. And I love parboiled rice because it just guarantees that you're going to always have a delicious pot of jambalaya. You can use brown rice if you want, but you're going to have to rinse off the starch 3 times before adding it to the pot. Parboiled rice just guarantees delicious rice every single time. Stir the pot to make sure that the rice is evenly coated with all of this love. Now I'm going to also add 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. And the tomato paste is going to add color and a depth of umami flavor to this dish. This is totally different from ketchup rice because we only have a little bit of tomatoes. When I do a Creole Jambalaya style rice now, I'm using crushed tomatoes and tomato paste to build up the base of my sauce. This here is all about the fond. In the Creole Jambalaya, it's not about the fond, but it's more about that depth of flavor in the tomato base. See, country folk versus city folk. All right. Now I'm going to also add 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. I'm going to add my chicken and sausage back to the pot. I'm going to add the remaining seasoning. Stir to combine. Now I want you to pick your favorite New Orleans song that you have in your head, because that's the tune that your palate is going to be singing really, really soon. Oh, yeah. Yes, I'm excited. And we're also going to add 4 cups of low-sodium chicken stock. The reason why I like adding low-sodium chicken stock is because I want to control how much salt goes into my dish. So after your jambalaya comes to a boil, cover it, reduce your fire, set your timer for 30 minutes, hit the pause button, and then we'll see you back after that. My timer just went off. My house is smelling like a party is about to happen. But before we open up this top, let's chop down our green onions. I always like to take off the tops because they've been out longer. so they begin to wilt, don't make a pretty of a dish as we would like. So if this is 2 bunches is too much for you to chop all at once, take your time and do 1 bunch at a time. You want some nice, even, small slices. And if you're ever looking to perfect your knife skills, green onions will be the vegetable of choice I will recommend because they don't roll all over the place when you're trying to chop them. And they'll also help you get your knife motion in a good rhythm. Rock the boat, baby. Take your time, young man, and wash them fingers. Make sure you also slice the white part of the green onion, okay? It's all flavor. All right. Now that that's nice and sliced, time for the big reveal. Look at that, look at that. Now, we're just gonna add half of these in. This is where I like to add the white part in, and I like to save the green for my final garnish. And just take a fork and just begin to fluff it, okay? And this fluffing just allows everything to get more steam through it and allows the rice to release. You know, the rice been all on top of each other. Now they get to stretch out and all those granules begin to breathe more. Look at that beautiful color. You always want to stir your rice with a fork because it helps comb through the rice. If you use a spoon, it smashes your rice. And this is not smashed jambalaya. So now we're going to cover this and let it cook for another 10 minutes with no heat. It's been 10 minutes and my stomach is growling. Look at how pretty. This is why we use red bell pepper. Look at how it begins to pop in this dish. So when we folded in the green onions, that would have been your perfect time to add your shrimp, your crawfish, your lobster, your crab meat, any of those shellfish that you love. Oysters one of those weird things. I wouldn't recommend putting oysters in the jambalaya. But anything else, go for it. I can see the chicken is nice and tender. You can see the kernels of rice is all nice and separated. Now we're just gonna garnish with a little bit more green onions across the top. Find me a fork, and let's give this a try. Green onion, little chicken. Do you see all those colors? Look at the chicken, the green onion, the sausage, the well-cooked rice. Now all we have to do is just give it a little taste. Hold on. Got the camera. That's the camera. This is so good. The rice is nice and tender. The chicken is just shredding and falling in your mouth. The sausage has a little nice crispiness on it. This is Cajun Jambalaya at its finest.